Please rise for the invocation by Reverend Will Posey, Associate Pastor, First United Methodist.
Will you pray with me? Lord God, creator of all things, you have so ordered the universe that with every season your generous provision allows for the thriving of life everywhere, on the north side and the south side and in every quadrant. We pray that you would also order our lives and work and direct us to the fulfillment of your will, that all people and all things would be drawn together in your steadfast love. This night we pray you guide our work. Grant us insight to recognize the needs and aspirations of our communities. Strengthen our leaders that they may work diligently, faithfully, and transparency as together we strive to build a city with hope and a future. Awaken our imaginations and creativity to foster a community of enjoyment, trust, and safety. Give us eyes and ears, especially for those among us who are most vulnerable. Teach us to hear rather than be heard, to understand rather than be understood. Bless our leaders, and encourage everyone who calls Hickory home to be persistent in their commitment to the well-being of this city. These things we pray in your name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. A few minutes ago, there was a plane crash from the Hickory Airport. We think locally based, several injuries. Let's have a moment of silent prayer for the safety of the people in that airplane, please. Amen. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
No special presentations. Any persons requesting to be heard? We have a motion to approve the minutes of December 16th.
I move approval.
Second.
Motion by Seaver, second by Patton. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. That's unanimous. All members are present except Mr. Meisner is in Durham at Duke with Libby. Motion to reaffirm and ratify on second reading.
So moved.
Second. Motion
by Patton, second by Seaver. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. That's unanimous. I'd like to ask that that item E be removed from the consent agenda for separate consideration. Anything else to be removed?
Mr. Mayor, I move approval of the consent agenda with the exception of item E.
Second.
Motion by Lael, second by Seaver. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. That's unanimous. Mr. Burry, I just had a question about E. You might, if you will, just introduce the subject for the benefit of the people here.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. Item E is the approval of a lease agreement between the City of Hickory and the Hickory Soup Kitchen for the property located at 131 Main Avenue. So what most people think of as the Soup Kitchen property, that's a facility owned by the city. The terms of the lease are a nominal amount of $1 a year. The property's been leased to the Hickory Soup Kitchen for a number of years, and the current lease has expired. The lease will be is contemplated to be a 2-year term, which would expire December 30th, 2016. The lessee is responsible for payment of all the utilities, furnishing, security, taking care of the facility, its janitorial services, and maintaining the premises in good order, routine maintenance and repairs, etc.
Okay, my question, and I'm just throwing this out there. They, of course, have announced intent to relocate. And I had a question, and I'm not sure whether it's in our best interest to do this or not, but I had a question of whether the term of the lease should be December 30th, 2016, or upon earlier vacation of premises by the by the lessee.
Let me look the lease up to see if there is that kind of an option. I know that they have entered into this. I mean, so these are basically their terms saying that's consistent with their plans.
And it might not be in our best interest to worry about taking it over, because then we've got to take over the maintenance and insurance and a lot of other things.
No, I think there's a clause in there that allows them just, upon notice, just to walk.
Well, they can walk, but then the
lease is done.
Oh, the lease is terminated.
The lease is terminated,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
I think it's 30 days, but I don't know.
If that's in there, my question is answered.
Let me just confirm that, Mr. Mayor. Look it up in the find the page in the agenda.
At the time I was working on this, I could not, and I'm still not able to access my Dropbox for the agenda. And I don't feel too bad, because several very talented young people in this room also could not access my Dropbox.
Well, it was your Dropbox.
It's my Dropbox.
We could always go online to the...
There is under paragraph 14 of
I figured that out a little too late, but I did figure that out.
Mayor, there is under paragraph 14 of the lease, early termination, says that the lessee, the tenant, has the right to terminate the term of the lease, provided that they give us 30 days written notice prior to their intention to terminate.
Well, if they vacate but don't give us notice, do they keep control of the property?
Yes.
Do we want that to be the case, or do we want to say, since we know that they intend to vacate, do we want it to end when they move out?
Well, the removal...
And then we control the property.
I don't think we're going to have an issue with it. Yeah, I mean, we would own it anyway.
Well, we would own it, but I mean, could they use it for storage for a time? I mean...
No, it's they're required to use it for food distribution.
Yeah, they have to use
Oh,
it.
they've got to use it for exactly what they say. Okay.
Yes.
They do not control it if they're not using it for that purpose.
That's correct.
So then the lease would terminate as soon as they're not using it for that purpose.
That's correct.
I make a motion that we approve this lease agreement.
Second.
Motion by Wright, second by Seaver. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. That's unanimous. Public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Your first item of new business is a public hearing. It was duly advertised to be held tonight, and it's for consideration of closing a portion of 3rd Street Southeast and 2 unopened right-of-ways as shown on Plat Book 4, page 78. And I'll ask Public Services Director, Mr. Chuck Hansen, to come to the podium and present the road closing petition to council prior to opening the public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Berry, Mayor, members of council. This public hearing is for the closure of basically 2 different sections of roadway. One is open. It's 3rd Street Southeast. This is essentially behind the Transportation Insight building that's being renovated. It's 3rd Street Southeast from 1st Avenue Southeast north towards the railroad tracks to sort of the southern side of Main Avenue Southeast. Main Avenue intersection there will stay open and be passable. Staff agrees with this closing, subject to the reservation of utility easements that are in the road right away there. The second area of roads to be closed under this public hearing is essentially 2 unopened right-of-ways that just carry over from old plats in the area. And that's essentially both of these. One's an 11-foot unopened road right-of-way, and another one's a 15-foot unopened road right-of-way. Both of those lie east of 3rd Street and north of the railroad track on the property that they proposed for some of the field in the master plans that you saw there. Again, staff agrees with the closing of both of those unopened right-of-ways. If it's a small sketch, but there's a sketch of that as Exhibit A on page 141 of your agenda packet. Both of those show up in that page and the next 2 or 3 following pages. But staff would recommend approval of the closing of those.
Do we have any questions of Mr. Hanson? Has anyone expressed concern or reservation about this in response to the advertisement?
Nothing that we've heard, sir.
Okay, I'll declare the public hearing open, and the ground rules generally are that we allow 15 minutes for those voting, for those who would like to speak in opposition to the proposal, and then 15 minutes for those who would like to speak in favor of the proposal. Then we allow 5 minutes for rebuttal and serve rebuttal. Time will be kept by the clerk's department here, and 3 minutes, 6 minutes, 9 minutes will be called to assist in allocating the time fairly to all people who want to participate. With that, I'd ask if anyone is present who would like to speak against this proposal.
Training seminar. Okay.
Is there anyone who would like to speak for this proposal? As usual, my explanation of the ground rules can amount to a thing. With that, I'll close the public hearing and ask for motion or discussion.
I move approval of the road closure.
I'll second.
Motion by Lael, second by Zagaroli. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. That's unanimous.
Next item of new business is moving into this segment of departmental reports. And as you all know from past meetings and widely circulated in the community, that the Friends of Hickory are working on a proposal for a park to be in the downtown area. And I'm going to ask Assistant City Manager Andrea Sratt to come to the podium. And Andrea is going to kind of cover some of the staff analysis of the parking relative to the park's location, and then I think she'll introduce folks from Friends of Hickory to show and talk about the actual conceptual design of the park.
Mr. Berry, real quick, it became known to me about 45 days ago that the Friends of Hickory had contracted with Land Design to do this park work. And about 90 days ago, I married a gal that works for Land Design. So, the city's not really engaged with Land Design on any of this, but I figured I better check with Mr. Crone and make sure that there wasn't a conflict.
You have, and I appreciate you doing that this time and in the past, and all council members who have done that in the past. And I've reviewed the applicable law and reviewed our ethics rules and policy, and the only thing that's on the agenda tonight is approval to move forward with the fundraising and direct the staff to move forward with the parking lot. And I have advised you that I think that any potential conflict is extremely remote, and I appreciate you bringing that to my attention and bringing it to the public's attention. I do not think that precludes you from voting, and as a matter of fact, as you all well know, you have a duty to vote unless there is a specific conflict or you feel like there would be.
All right. Very good.
Ms. Stratford.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Berry, Mayor, Wright, members of council. So I am before you tonight to introduce this request for additional consideration of a concept for a park in the downtown, and also to consider directing staff to move forward with an alley closure and dedicating what is now a public parking lot to be a park space. So I'm going to start with a little bit of background quickly, and you are familiar with all of this, that the Friends of Hickory approached the city at this time last year or a little earlier for a proposal to develop the park in the downtown, and they hosted a design process over the course of several weeks, and then used that community design to give guidance to what became ultimately a proposal for the development of a parking lot in the downtown at the intersection of 3rd Street and Main Avenue Northwest for a park. And in October, you heard an update from Friends of Hickory, gave support generally for those concepts as they had evolved at that point, and you asked us to come back with some additional information about how this would impact parking, specifically those 21 spaces where the park would be located. And so just to summarize quickly again, moving forward with private fundraising is something that the Friends of Hickory is interested to do, and they will speak more about that. So they would like sort of guidance to go forward with that, and also to move ahead at the right time, tied in with the development process, to close the alley and the parking lot. So I want to speak specifically to the parking analysis, and Traffic Engineering and Public Services spent a number of weeks studying the traffic and the patterns in that parking lot. They put a counter down in the parking lot. So the lot itself is here. This map that you're looking at is actually the larger block. This is Lot 1, and this is the Duke Energy parking lot. And this is the Bank of Granite, what's considered the Bank of Granite, now Community 1 parking lot in question. So the traffic engineering did that study over a period of time, and they noticed a number of vehicles coming in and out. So it is a used parking lot, and those peak times include the lunch hour between 11 and 2, most weekdays. And so about 14 cars on average is what we calculated with that study. And then the weekends, it was really not very, very, very low, more related to just people coming onto Union Square or places like that. And then of the, there are a number of components to the parking that exist. So there are 155 spaces in this entire area. And then you see the blue sort of identify those spaces. 155 here. There were 21 or are 21 in this lot in question. And so this lot is, just for reference, is the Elks Lodge. That's the associated parking with the Elks. So it's not being considered right now. So 155 spaces are in the current Lot 1 and the Duke Energy lot. And so one factor that affects the request is that the Transportation Insight development at Lyerly Mill will move 44 vehicles to and take all their lease spaces. They will no longer need to lease any spaces in this lot or in this lot, and so that frees up 44 that are currently being leased. So most of these two parking lots, most of the spaces are leased right now, where people pay roughly $27 a month to have a space and have their hang tags, and that's how that parking is used during the weekday hours. So that's a factor. But we asked, or traffic engineering actually gave us some alternatives, and that is to redesign that parking lot. So we said, sure, let's look at that and see what you can determine. And so it's been determined that there are additional 15, if it was resurfaced and restriped and reconfigured, we could gain an additional 15 spaces just by making this a more efficient parking design. And so this image here in red shows the additional spaces in those lots. So additional 15 found just by restriping. So most of the impact is then mitigated with those 15 additional, but when you take away the 44 from Transportation Insight, there's really a gain of 38 spaces for that area in that lot. One of the things that, so going back to this is the existing, this is a better view, so you can sort of see the layout there. Maybe the spaces are slightly larger, maybe just not quite as tight in. And then this is the redesign, zooming in just a little bit so you can see the shift there. And so that's the summary of the parking analysis, is that we came much to the good with parking. And what would happen if this project were approved is that entire parking lot would be reconfigured in terms of where those people could park who lease spaces, and then identify a specific number that would be related to hourly, maybe 3-hour or 4-hour for use by people who shop on Union Square or go eat, or who would use this park. So there would be hourly spaces identified in this parking lot once it was redesigned. So from that, I'm going to turn it over to Allison Holtzman, and she's going to cover, and I'm happy to take questions on the parking first if you want to do that, and then Allison can talk about the design.
Well, one question, I don't know if you know the answer to this or not. Once Transportation Insight vacates the building that I believe is owned by the church, is there a potential for someone else to go back in that building and need those spaces or need additional spaces, or do we know what's going to happen with that location?
With the church?
Yes.
Demolish, that's
okay.
right.
So
that's what I've heard too.
There won't be a future need for someone to need those spaces back?
During the week.
Well, from that specific location.
Right. So it from what I understood too, and what Mr. Wood had said,
if they're going to tear down,
that's an office space that'll be demolished.
Okay. My question is there going to be need for somebody at that same location to need spots, and we don't know the answer to that?
I mean, there's less of a direct need because that building would not be there as an office space, but it's always available. There are a number of vacancies in that lot right now, and right now there are 19 vacancies with the 155 spaces that are,
if they're going to tear down the building, then that, chances are that they won't be needing those spaces.
Right. I think it's very minimal. I think the interest would be to make sure we have spaces for folks to be able to walk toward the shopping and dining and to this park. So, okay, I'll turn it over to Allison and then come back.
Okay. Hi. I've spoken on previous evenings, and we have as a group, about why we're doing this park. And we've spoken about our commitment to the well-being of Hickory, and that remains. So tonight I'm just going to speak to you about where we are in the design process, and I'm excited to show you some of the pictures, and we have the questions. We're asking the same questions that Andrea addressed as well. Our goal in having a park downtown was to be something that was new, that drew you to it, that was different than a typical playground, but also something that children would be drawn to, but also adults, people of all ages. A place that you could sit, a place that was peaceful, a place that was pleasant, and that adds to the aesthetics and to the appeal of and to the activity downtown. And that's what we're trying to do, is bring community downtown to the heart and the core of the city. So we worked with two different groups. We chose Compan, which is an international playground company. After searching and countless hours, meeting with all kinds of playground companies, really in different ones in the country, we chose Compan because we really preferred their design. We liked their design. Their durability, their safety standards are the highest in the industry internationally, and their durability is the best. They also have very low maintenance, and the board was very impressed, the Friends of Hickory board was very impressed by the low amount of maintenance that's needed in these playgrounds. And so that's why we've chosen this direction. You can see the fencing around the outside, and that's for protection, obviously, from being an urban park. We feel that the parents need to feel safe, and we don't want kids running to the street. But we want the fencing to be something that is also appealing. This area was drawn in, I'm going to go to a different slide to show you a better picture of this. Okay. This is the west side of the park where they have the tunnels into the embankment, and you see the splash pad area, and then the concept of actually Lake Hickory, of the Catawba River there. We are further developing the water part. We will be working with a water company that does splash pads to go further with this. But Land Design drew out the idea of it for us so that we could see how it would fit in, where it would go. We do want to provide water, but we'll be limited somewhat by cost and to what extent we can do that. We also want to provide education, and the goal of trying to put a Catawba River in there is to do something that really allows kids, adults to learn where we are and what we have in our area and what an asset it is, energy-wise, recreation, beauty. So drawing attention to that is something we really want to point at. And also we do feel there's a need for public water access, and splash pads are fun and very popular. There's another image. There's embankment slides. This over here to the left, they kind of have a chalkboard drawn in. All of this will go into detail. This is kind of entering in. So you would have Community 1 directly on the right. I'd be coming in at this point from Union Square. So we'd be at the west end of the Union Square by the news building on the corner, across from from the community theater. So that's how you'd enter into the park right there. And you can see that it is appealing. It would be an appealing walkway as well. Seating area, passive play area, unstructured play area. We wanted that for kids, adults, for picnicking. She's also drawn in the suggestion of a piece of pottery and using some sort of artist that's maybe a North Carolina artist to put in a piece of pottery or put in a sculpture or something like that would be something that would add to the beauty of the park. And there's an overview so you can kind of get a better idea of where we are. Because it's fenced in, I just want to point out, because it's fenced in along the roadway areas, you really would only be entering the park from the crosswalk up above. And that would be where we are on that. So, and do you have any questions at this point about the design?
I just have a thought. I was at Kim Ellington's home and studio. Do you know Kim Ellington? He's a potter out in Vail. He grew up in Hickory.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I'm talking to him, and he says, you know what, we're talking about the bond referendum passing and all that stuff. But he says, you know what I want to do in Hickory? I want to do a community build of a sculptural pot. And so I bring that up to your attention because I didn't realize there was some pottery there, but it would be a perfect fit. And I think he's really jazzed about doing it. And the whole community would come out and participate in it as it's built. And there's
so much of
pottery in this area. So
I love that.
Yeah,
we want to bring in people and interest, and that sounds amazing.
Yeah. Okay. Just wanted to mention that.
You grew up across the street from me. How many people will the park be able to accommodate at a given time? Has that been calculated?
I unfortunately do not know the answer to that question. I could certainly, that is something that Compan and Patrick Trippy he's a representative in Charlotte, and he has been great, and I can ask him that question immediately. It's a good size. There's a lot of space. I don't want to guess at a number and be wrong, but it's a good number of people, and it feels, and there is an openness to it. So I don't think it's nothing under 100 or anything like that.
I'm just wondering if there was a number there somewhere.
I'm sure there is. I don't know it. I'm sorry.
And going back to parking for just a minute too, I think I saw somewhere where there's going to be specific parking for buses also.
We've had many conversations, or we've had conversations with city staff, and that was discussed in conversation among city staff at one of our last meetings. So I think that's really up to the city whether that's needed or not. I actually went out and met with Lance Height, the city planner in Conover, and I asked him specifically at Conover Station if he has bus parking, and he said, no, we have buses all the time, and it's fine. We have buses come in constantly for field trips and that kind of thing, and actually their splash pad is drawn. He said, I'm thrilled that Hickory is considering doing this. There are so many people coming to the splash pad all the time. good thing.
Has any consideration been with having all the little ones at the park? I know what water does to a little kid, and having access to bathrooms that they wouldn't then go bother Community One or area businesses.
As far as the bathrooms, what we've addressed, and we've been talking with the health department about what is needed for bathroom access, and it is determined that that is up to the city, and we've talked to city. That's really up to the city. It's not anything required by them, and we do have that in writing. But we, in talking with city staff, feel that the bathrooms that are on Union Square are sufficient, and I personally feel that they are sufficient.
So we're going to expand the hours for that?
Yeah, I mean, as the park's built and stuff, we'll have to consider those needs and maybe even, look at the bathroom facility itself and what kind of an update and upgrade needs to take place there. Yeah.
So what we are asking is we want to move forward in fundraising with confidence. And as we continue in this process, working closely with city staff, when we have the funds ready to build, do you agree with the parking lot being able to be used for the park?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would be comfortable with suggesting that the city do a memorandum of understanding or something to give you guys some reasonable assurance as you go forward, and certainly raise money for this. I think it's a fabulous idea, and that might be more helpful to you than just us saying, "Yeah, keep going."
Yes.
I think potential donors too would feel better, perhaps, just a little more concrete that we are certainly. I'm certainly in favor of it.
Yeah.
I also do want to mention that for further information, I don't know if this is the right time to mention it, but on Thursday night, it is public that we are going to have a presentation of the park to the community, and anyone's invited from 6 to 8 at Holler Mill, and it is a public, anyone is welcome. So we would love for anyone to come here more and ask questions. All of you.
Have you heard any opposition from anyone about this particular place?
Throughout the process, yes. I mean, we have had discussions about concerns with parking, and that's why we've been working.
I know the DDA was concerned at one time, and there was some back and forth discussion with your two groups. And I'm wondering if there's been any resolutions to those conversations, and if there's been any other individuals that have come forward that have voiced concerns about not just parking, but about the park in general being at that location.
Yeah. We met with Connie Kincaid and the president of the HDDA several months ago with city staff present, and had a lot of questions. They brought up the concerns of some of their tenants that want parking accessibility for their customers, and we had a very good conversation. We talked about the possibility of asking the city to redo some parking. And so they can't speak for when we're speaking to the two of them, they cannot speak for all of the HDDA members at that point, but we had a good conversation. We left that with, when we do have a design, we would like to come talk with you so we know what we're even talking about. So we do have a meeting. We're going to the HDDA meeting on January 20th to present to HDDA at that point. So that's where we are on that.
You've also been to Parks and Recreation, is that correct?
We have been to Parks and Recreation, and we're planning to go again on January 12th. Everyone's ready on that, and they have all the information, all the details from Compan, all the safety requirements and everything that needs to be checked. That's in their hands.
And after construction, I know this is probably obvious, but after construction, it will become the property of Parks and Recreation Department.
Absolutely, yes, in the city.
Well, the reason I asked that, of course, then we got to be concerned about ongoing maintenance, which I assume would come from the city, and
yes,
so we'd have to have some control over that.
Yes, it is, and that is something that we have discussed, of course, with Parks and Rec, and also why we chose to go with this company. The equipment's very low maintenance. This is surfacing, so this is not grass in those areas, trying to keep up grass with the mud. It's made to look like grass, and that's been one of our inspiration parks. I brought a picture of it at the last time I was at council, was in Clyde Warren Park in Dallas, and it looks like grass, but it's in talking with Dallas, it is turf. So that we're building that with that in mind.
So in terms of tonight, staff has recommended that, and I think Councilman Lell's correct, I would amend our recommendation to say that the council directs staff to move forward with putting together a memorandum of understanding with the Friends of Hickory, which contemplates the city moving forward with closing the parking lot and the alleyway at the appropriate time. I do think that both city staff and the Friends of Hickory are looking for official action from this body so that we know we're moving in the direction y'all want us to go in.
I'd make that motion.
I'll second that.
Of course, it goes without saying, I just want to be abundantly cautious here. It goes without saying that anything we do will have to go through the legal process, the public hearing process. We will have to have that to close the alleyway, right?
Yeah.
For the alley component.
Yeah, the alleyway, you can, I mean, that parking lot, no. The parking lot is the city parking lot. You can do whatever you want to with it. Yes, closing the alleyway, you would have to advertise for the public hearing, etc.
And the alleyway's being closed in conjunction with what? The redesign of the parking lot?
You're basically extending the park into the alleyway, so the alleyway actually now becomes an entrance into the parking lot that's at the front of the bank, and doesn't go all the way through anymore because there's nothing there to go through to. If that makes sense.
It becomes obsolete.
Yep, it does.
But we could call for that public hearing anytime and just determine it.
Right, basically you're going on record to say that the Friends of Hickory can move forward with their fundraising. We're going to put together a
I'm not saying that we'll close the alleyway.
And that we'll enter into a memorandum of understanding with Friends of Hickory and just directing staff to do that. And basically saying, you're going on the record as saying as appropriate, you're going to consider changing the parking lot and closing, but of course you'll have to go through the public hearing process to close the alleyway, as the mayor pointed out.
Well, this is exactly the kind of thing we envisioned when we started down the road on our bond referendum, that we would have partners join us and do things that weren't even anticipated. So I will call for all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed no. That's unanimous. Thank you.
Second item under department reports is consideration of facilitating naming rights and opportunities by the Greater Hickory Tennis Association for tennis complex improvements at Hickory City Park and the city's financial commitment. And I'll ask Mr. Mac McLeod, Parks and Rec Director, to come to the podium and discuss the topic with City Council.
Thank you, Mr. Berry. Mayor Wright, members of council, Mr. Crone, good evening. Before you tonight is your consideration of facility naming rights opportunities for tennis complex improvements at Hickory City Park. With me tonight assisting in the presentation are really the two persons who are most responsible for where we are tonight, and I commend them both for their efforts, and that being Chair of our Parks and Recreation Commission, Tony Wood, and the President of the Greater Hickory Tennis Association, Lenny Teague, and I'll be calling them up in a few minutes. What I want to do is just talk to you a little bit about what's going on at the park up until this point. Back in fiscal year 2011-2012, the upper 5 tennis courts at the park went through a total reconstruction. We totally rebuilt the upper 5 tennis courts. In the following fiscal year, in 2012-2013, we totally reconstructed the lower 3 tennis courts. Around that same time, in January 2013, Kathy Kim relocated her tennis program to Hickory City Park, and I think I caught in my peripheral vision. I think I saw Kathy come in. I think the one word I wrote down when I was done, I think the one word I want to use when Kathy began her program at Hickory City Park, the one word I can use to describe what happened there was an explosion of tennis, an absolute explosion of tennis. We've got youth and adult, I'm just reading all, we got youth and adult tennis lessons Kathy's had there. We've run youth tennis tournaments. We're in an organization called the Western Youth Athletic Association, which is a group of Parks and Recreation departments in the 16th most western counties. We had not participated in that tennis program for many years. Kathy got that program started. We were able to enter a team in that league this year. We've run parent-child tournaments. We've run spring break camps, summer programs. I think we were looking at running some numbers today. We're pushing close to 1,000 participants since we moved it over there. So the park is we have tennis going on at Hickory City Park, and it's great. This is Kathy running them through their drills. She runs them hard. These couple of slides went through So with all that, after we did the reconstruction of all 8 tennis courts, Kathy brought her program over there and became part of the city's Parks and Recreation program. Representatives of the Greater Hickory Tennis Association approached staff with an interest in developing a partnership to make further significant improvements to the tennis complex at Hickory City Park. And Lenny and Tony will go into more detail. I'll hit the surface on that. What we wanted to do, just give you an idea of the current site conditions. What you're looking at, this is the combination picnic shelter restroom facilities currently at the park. It was built back in the early 1970s, 73, 74 time frame. Most of the park was developed using federal dollars, land and water conservation funds. So a restroom facility in some form or fashion due to federal guidelines has to remain for perpetuity based on the federal guidelines. This is just another picture. This is the restrooms, and then beyond it is the picnic shelter itself. This is the entrance road coming into Hickory City Park off of 12th Street Drive Northwest, and then back in the back side. I'll show you. Here's a closer picture. This is actually the existing parking lot as it is today. Currently, we only have 20 parking spaces there. So, if you can imagine, with the youth tennis program going on in the summer, we have people park here that use the bikeway that goes down to Gardner Rotary Park on some days, and I'm sure Kathy can attest to it because my phone's rung, or the guy get a note from Kathy about that. But the parking lot does give, and it's a problem, but it's a good problem because we know the park's getting used. This is the walkway that leads down to the upper tennis courts. Prior to the Greater Hickory Tennis Association's interest in partnering with the city, staff's plan was really just to add an additional restroom facility down closer to the tennis courts, basically where you see the picnic shelter. There used to be a building there. Used to be restrooms actually years ago there. So up until we started having discussions with the Greater Hickory Tennis Association, plans were just to put a restroom facility there. Based on the preliminary discussions that staff had with both the Parks and Recreation Commission and the Greater Hickory Tennis Association. We developed a preliminary master site plan for the proposed improvements for the park. And what we got highlighted in yellow are the improvements we'll be discussing with you tonight. And the area, you can see the top yellow area is the park coming in, the existing parking lot, which is 20 spaces. Carrying it on down, we would expand that parking, create an additional 75 spaces, and then demolish the existing restroom facility and bring it down closer to the existing tennis courts, and we'll show you that in just a few minutes. The facility we're proposing, what you're seeing here, this is the picnic shelter and restroom facility we recently completed at Kiwanis Park. Plans are basically to duplicate somewhat what you see there at Hickory City Park. I want to show you just a couple of pictures of that. This is the walkway leading up to the restroom. Just another shot. This is an interior view where the changes would be made to this design versus what we would propose for out of Hickory City Park. If you see that back wall there, we would add a meeting room onto that back wall, about approximately 500 square feet of a meeting space there, and then extend, put another bay onto the picnic shelter. So the picnic shelter will be the same size as you see there. We do have project cost estimates. New picnic shelter, restroom, meeting room facility, $275,000. We would, as I mentioned, we would expand the parking from its current 20 spaces to 75 spaces. We would curb and gutter. Currently, the existing parking lot does not have curb and gutter. We would improve the lighting there. It would also involve removal of the existing picnic shelter, restroom structure. You can see that cost estimate. There'd be about approximately 250 linear feet of a paved access service road. We'd have approximately 1,440 linear feet of 8-foot wide paved walkway. One of the things we will be doing, taking you back, so currently right now it's very difficult to access those lower three tennis courts. So our plan is to take the paved walkway leading from the parking lot down to the upper courts, and then we'll go down to the lower courts. Seating, grassing, contingency allowance. So that total estimated project costs are $574,200. Based on Greater Hickory Tennis Association minimum funding commitment, which Lenny, when he comes up, he'll go into more detail on the commitment that Greater Hickory Tennis Association is prepared to make. But based on that minimum commitment of $125,000, the City of Hickory's maximum financial commitment to the project would be approximately $449,200. As I said when I started, a lot of discussions that got us to this point went between our chair of our Parks and Recreation Commission, Tony Wood, and Lenny Teague, as I said, who's president of GHTA. So at this time, I'd like to ask them to come up and just talk with you about through the process that both groups went through.
Thank you, Matt. Good evening, everybody. This has been an exciting project for us for a couple of reasons. As Mac mentioned, the usage at the park after Kathy Kim came on and brought her tennis program there, it exploded. And you know, that type of usage puts pressure on the existing facilities. I don't know if anybody here has been to this facility in the evening or in the later hours. You know, with more people come safety issues. So we're addressing a safety issue by increasing lighting, parking, those types of things. So the usage dictates that this is needed. Secondly, the connectivity between Geithner and the bike riding trails and this park. This is a facility that won't just serve tennis, it's going to serve the people that are frequenting Geithner as well, and the parking. I know that some of the challenge with the parking right now is that people who are using the trails, the cyclists, are using the parking at the tennis, and it's a battle for the parking spaces. So it's a facility that's needed. The timing was ideal. They approached us, and to have a public-private partnership is just the ideal situation for us. Rather than me standing here asking you for money without that type of partnership, I mean, it becomes much more attractive and exciting for us. But what excites me about being chair of the commission, and I'm speaking on behalf of the commission members, is we followed a process here. This is the culmination of months of working together, collaborating not only with the Greater Hickory Tennis Association, but Parks and Rec staff, the commission members who are representing, the public, the citizens of the community. And I think that's what excites me most, is it shows that, when we work together and we collaborate, we're able to culminate in this type of presentation. It makes a lot of sense to me. The commission, this was presented to the commission back in May, and some of the questions that came out were the funding percentages, and the CVYSA, the priority use agreement we had in place with them, was used as the model here. That came in at 20%. With the numbers that we're talking about, even with the contingency funds, the funds that they would be sharing or committing to this is 22% of the total project cost, including the contingency money. So we're above that model that we had with CVYSA. And that is what we've used throughout this entire process as a measuring stick. The commission unanimously recommended that we present this to you for your consideration, and we're hoping that you will approve us going forward. And the next step in the process are raising money, and I'm going to leave that up to Lenny to explain how that will be done.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, thank you. Just to give you a little background on the Greater Hickory Tennis Association, we're a nonprofit. We're under sub-nonprofit under United States Tennis Association, North Carolina Tennis Association. Our main mission is to provide the opportunity to learn tennis, play tennis, and promote tennis. And then, as you see with Kathy Kim's program there, she fits right into our mold. I mean, anybody that wants to learn to play tennis, she's going to make it happen. It doesn't matter what your financial situation is, she's going to make it happen. So, when she got over there, and of course the city committed to redo those courts, as he stated, the usage went way up. They've got over 15 teams over there, in addition to the youth programs. So it's a very busy spot many times, and so it was brought to our attention, mainly by Kathy Kim, about some of the improvements that would be good to have at the park, and that's where we got involved. And as some of you know, I called a meeting and said, hey, how do we proceed with this, and what can we do to try to make this happen, because we think it's good for the city. It's good for tennis, but it's also good for the city, because we have a vision. We think that park can be something really nice, and it's got a perfect location, landing. So, and that's where we got together. We also went over what many other cities had done in their public parks with our planning process, and how their success went, and what kind of designs they did of their buildings. And that's kind of where we came up with the idea for this. And then the next thing is cost. So we worked real hard with Mike and to come up with some costs, and we feel real confident with our ability to raise the funds we're committed to. There's hopefully a good opportunity that we're going to raise more money than that. We have not started soliciting funds yet without permission or the project's approval, so that's kind of what we're here for tonight. The main things that we wish to raise money on is actually selling the naming rights. And so if we were successful in selling those kind of naming rights, we'd probably be funding more like 50% of the project instead of 22%. We don't know exactly where we're going to be. We've got some money in the bank right now that's the GHTA that we can commit to the project. and we feel confident that we can meet our obligation of at least $125,000. If we're successful in some of these other things, that the amount would go up a great deal. Any other questions?
I have a thought, and it's a little bit of a drop shot, to use a tennis analogy. It seems like right out of the gate after that bond vote, here's an opportunity to leverage your organization's mission with what we're trying to do with the Riverwalk. This land is contiguous to the Riverwalk.
Right.
So, if we're going to be building parking lots and bathrooms, they should be sized to maybe accommodate both uses. So would the GHTA be willing to let us dig into that just a little bit? It might take just a little bit more time than shooting right out of the gate, so we can do something really cool there.
Yeah, we're all for anything with the expansion. Right now, the 20-some spaces we have, if anything's going on in there now, there's people parking in the woods and all over everywhere. But with the addition of 75 spaces, we were taking into account that there's a good number of people that bike, they park and they bike, they walk, and obviously we want people to park and go to the park and have a picnic or whatever. So that's where I think when we were projecting the 75 spaces, I don't think we felt we needed all those all the time. We basically were hoping to allow for public access and much more than tennis. But we're willing to work with anybody, and that's what a lot of people ask me. Says, "Why don't you just wait and let the bond thing?" And I said, "Well, we're going to go ahead and proceed with this because we think this is good for Hickory, and if the bond passes, it's going to tie right into everything we're trying to accomplish for Hickory, and what's good for Hickory is good for Greater Hickory Tennis Association." So
bond money isn't earmarked for this.
No, but the idea is that you would design it such that you could kill two birds with one stone.
Well, exactly. It's right there. It is very close to where we presently have I guess I'd call it a mountain bike trail through there.
It is.
It ties in with a whole lot of amenities that we have and are planning to have.
Mm-hmm.
So I think what you were saying is you might want the city to make it even grander.
Precisely. And what it'll take is some time on the design side, I would think. But I'm sure we can.
We're for whatever. What we really want to do is get started, get the money, because the need right now for the bathrooms is immediate. There's certain times of the day that parents don't exactly feel great dropping their kids off up there, and we have some people that don't want to go up there and use them, and then obviously the parking situation. So we just want to proceed as quick as we can within your approval, obviously, and that's our hope. So.
Is 20 years naming rights, is that typical?
It's something, they asked me the question, and I batted around, and I've seen some that have no time limits. Our theory is the people that invest in the naming rights, we feel like they're going to have ownership in the park. And we want to give them something for a reasonable amount of time, but we also want them to continue to have ownership in the park. What I've learned from Greensboro and Winston-Salem and Asheville and all these other areas is that if they have ownership in the park, then 20 years from now when we decide we want to do something else, they're still involved in the park, and they still want it to be a great park because their name's on it. So,
well, actually, my question was should it be more than 20 years?
We weren't sure. That's something we definitely were not sure about. And we bounced it around, but we just thought, well, what's at least a reasonable amount of time that somebody would commit to? But my theory is hopefully it'll be a continuing process, especially if we're fortunate enough to get somebody to name the park. That's something, they're going to want it nice because their name's on it. So, but we're also open to, if you think it needs to be longer, or if we get out and start talking to people and decide it needs to be longer, then we can. But our theory is have it that, because the courts are going to need to be redone every so many years. There's a lot of things that are going to have to happen. So,
what is about 30 years? 30 years to redo the courts.
30 years. The courts.
Does that last 30 years or not?
No. Courts typically, about every 5 years, you end up at least having to reseal them. If you don't, then you start developing major cracks, which is what happened. The reason that project was so expensive this time was they literally had to dig out all the asphalt and completely redo them. That is more expensive than building a brand new court. So the hope is, and then we're hoping to help with that maintenance cost, is to, if we can take care of them as we go along, then we'll always have small maintenance costs before those cracks develop and before they get bigger. So that's the best way to do it. So, thank you.
So, following up on Lenny and Tony discussed it, basically from this point, a priority use agreement will be developed to formalize the partnership between the Greater Hickory Tennis Association and the City of Hickory, with that agreement requiring both the approval of the Parks and Recreation Commission and City Council. And as Tony said earlier, the Parks and Recreation Commission considered these facility naming rights opportunities at their November 11th meeting and has recommended its approval to you tonight. So with that being said, the staff recommendation to you, pending your consideration, the staff recommends development of a priority use agreement to be brought back to City Council for consideration, formalizing the partnership between the Greater Hickory Tennis Association and the City of Hickory for tennis complex improvements at Hickory City Park, to include the requesting facility naming rights opportunity. So that is staff's recommendation to you, and I'll be more than happy to answer any other questions any council member has.
You got a good showing out here tonight.
Yes, sir. Kathy gives me notes all the time. She drops me notes all the time.
Well, every once in a while, I just see something that I really want to make the motion on. So I'm going to make the motion that we proceed with the staff recommendation.
I will
second that. We got 2 seconds.
Can I, just for super clarity, can we have the understanding that, you know, as we're beginning design and drawing what stuff looks like, that we think 5-10 years down the road about Riverwalk?
That's a good kid.
Oh, it's absolutely. Yeah. That was that absolutely was an important addition to this.
Good. Thank you.
So,
I think we're talking, I'm not trying to interrupt you, but that's something that we'll take into consideration as a commission and staff during the design process. We'll make sure that that's a priority. And that we address that, and any ideas. I mean, I'm happy to make myself available for any ideas, you know, to discuss that I can take to those meetings.
Okay. Thank you.
We had the motion by Wright, and I'm going to give Zagaroli the credit for the second because he was the loudest on that one. So, do we have any further discussion? Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. That's unanimous.
Thank you.
And I don't know if you arranged for the media coverage that Kathy Kim got. The timing was impeccable. How can you turn down something when Kathy Kim and the program, we're going to take some credit for this, Kathy, has possibly, most likely, turned a young lady's life into a direction that will result in accomplishments she never dreamed before. And we will be watching that young lady, Destiny, for a long time, Kevin. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your time.
The next item on your agenda this evening is discussion of bond commission ordinance and potential of calling for a public hearing. So, as has been widely discussed since the bonds were approved, councils expressed an interest in creating an official bond commission. At your workshop a month and a half ago at Highland Recreation Center, you had discussion about that. So staff has put together kind of a straw man, a bond commission ordinance to begin that conversation, to help you clarify what you would like that commission to do and how it would be made up. So what I'm going to do is obviously in the agenda packet was the initial draft. Since that draft has gone out to you all, I've received various comments and feedback, and so I've tried to reflect some of that here in the PowerPoint. I've distributed to you a hard copy of the PowerPoint so you can jot down your notes and thoughts as we go through. And what I'd like to do is start with an overview and then kind of walk through each of the sections. And in the PowerPoint, I've got highlighted some of the areas that either staff tweaked or added since the original draft, or your comments and thoughts, and even just generally some questioned areas for discussion. And then my last slide, I've actually tried to pull together all of those highlighted areas so that you can sit there and kind of look at, okay, here's all the different points of decision that we need to talk about. But obviously, as I go through, if you say, hey, well, we ought to talk about that one too, we'll stop and talk, and then we can add it to kind of the list at the end, if you will. So basically, the mission of the Bond Commission, well, let me first say that an ordinance requires a public hearing and basically codifies this commission. So it takes it to the highest level that you have in terms of the boards and commissions that serve, that are appointed by you all, city residents, citizens that serve the community. Higher than a task force, higher than all the other terms, I guess, that we use, committees, etc. So it gives it a sense of longevity and a sense of important purpose. The mission in general terms is to serve as an advisory board to City Council for implementation of the bond projects, including but not limited to the Riverwalk, Streetscape, Gateways, Wayfinding, and the City Walk. We propose that the composition be made of city residents, and I've got a question mark there, and we'll come back and talk about that. I know there were some comments from a couple of council members of, do we look at the ETJ? What about people who own businesses in the city but don't necessarily reside in the city? So I think that is something you all need to talk about and clarify.
As we go through, there are a number of places where there are question marks and maybe some highlighted items that will be subject of discussion. With council's concurrence, I propose that we go through this as it is.
Okay.
In its entirety, and then we go back and pick up those individual items and see if we reach consensus or if we need to have a vote.
Yeah, that's where on page 13, or well, my 13, you're probably 26 or something. That's where I've tried to capture, Mayor, all of those questions so that at the end, after you've looked at it in its entirety, you can kind of say, okay, here's points of question and discussion, and let's debate them and determine, if we have consensus or where we want to direct staff to go with the next revision of this. Thank you. 27 appointed by City Council, 9 ex officio, which are voting. And those ex officios are tied specifically to council, boards and commissions, and the Catawba County Chamber of Commerce. Terms are proposed to be two 3-year staggered terms. Officers of a chair and a vice chair appointed by the commission. A quorum of 10. And of course, minutes being taken, and because it is a commission appointed by City Council, all public records and open meetings laws apply. Absence from 3 consecutive meetings basically equals a retirement. So that's kind of the high-level overview. Walk through the preamble really quick, and I won't read all of this to you, but basically, it states the obvious, that there's a $40 million bond referendum, that you all are seeking citizen engagement and want to have this commission providing you feedback and insights on the projects. I have explicitly accepted Business Park 1764 from the purview of the commission. As we talked at your workshop at Highland Recreation Center, staff's feeling is that that's a very unique, and really it's not a public asset per se, it's a property to be developed specifically for business use. My feeling was it would be difficult for a broad citizen commission to really be able to provide you the right kind of input that you would need on developing a business park that's going to be very specific in its development. I think the relationship there would be that staff or Mr. Millar from the EDC would come to those meetings and simply give them an update. Here we are. But their role would not be one of reviewing design or proposals for work to be done out there.
Well, and another factor is those sorts of things often require timeliness and confidentiality as we're going forward. So I personally agree fully that should be considered outside the purview of this commission.
Yeah, that's a great insight.
But advise them as a matter of interest as we can.
Right. Yep. Thanks. Moving on in the preamble, then you have one little point of clarification is making sure that because the life of this commission is going to be at least the term of the bonds, and although obviously the focus of the commission and of staff and council is to move forward with the projects that were discussed as part of the bonds, I think it's appropriate to make sure that people understand any other projects that fit within the language of the approved bonds could be considered as well. You don't have to only do the projects that are listed in terms of the Riverwalk, the City Walk, the gateways, and so we've added or proposed that we add. Where's it going to show? I guess it's right there. A little bit hard to see, but the term other projects consistent with the referendum. So making sure that people understand that all aspects of the referendum. So here as we go through section 2247, the composition and appointments, one of the questions again is must they be a member? The number 27 helps us divide out basically both by council appointment and by the terms and having staggered terms, and we'll get to that in a second. Now we look about, okay, what are the following, which boards and commissions are represented. So again, this is just our straw man out there to discuss, but from staff looking at it, we felt like there were a number of existing boards and commissions that should have a seat. So you've got the Planning Commission, Historic Preservation, Community Appearance, Public Art, Community Relations, the Business Development, Parks and Rec, and the Youth Council. I think there's a lot of conversation in the community about other entities. Does the Chamber of Commerce, should they have an automatic seat there, given their support of the bond referendum? But as in conversation I had with some council members today, I think that does create a little bit of an issue of, well, where do you draw a line? There are probably other entities, including Lenore Rhine, potentially the TDA in terms of the convention center. I think you need to give some thought to that. Is it only the Catawba County Chamber of Commerce, or are there others? So just, that's again a point of discussion on your part. And have we missed any boards and commissions that should be included? I will stop here and say that we felt like voting was important for ex officio. I know different committees and commissions and et cetera look at their ex officios differently. But we felt like if we're asking these folks to come and to represent their board and commission, that they ought to have a voice. You've got a big commission as it is. And we felt like they might feel a little bit disenfranchised if they're simply sitting in those meetings and maybe reporting back out to their board and commission, but not necessarily that engaged in having a vote. Again, that's something you all certainly can decide. This is simply staff's crack at it.
And drawing from these groups for ex officio, some of these would probably be considered for nomination as non-ex officio anyway.
Could be.
So,
could be.
I hear you.
But they would actually be appointed by their body. So the Planning Commission would say, would have their own discussion and say, we want this member to represent us and to fill that seat.
Would that body that provides that person, will they For the person that they may want to know, would it be just for a 1 year at a time? Or
Yeah, we're going to come to that in a second, but I'll go ahead and address that. So it's contemplated that the board and commission members serve a 1-year term and can serve 2 terms. So then you get opportunity for it to rotate through the board and commission members as well, and you just get more citizens
And also,
involved.
some of those may rotate off that board before
That's right.
the term would be up.
Yep. Yeah, there's going to be a whole host of reasons that people will rotate out before their term is up. Obviously, people move in and out of the community, different things like that, if they are absent and retire.
I mean, I don't want to, I know you want to give...
No, that's fine.
But let me ask a question just from a practical perspective. And it's not until you really start thinking it through that this kind of stuff comes up. So these guys are on a 1-year term. It's a quarterly meeting cycle. They're going to have 4 meetings. Yeah. I mean, I guess I'm trying to understand with their role in furthering the bond, would it be more about bringing information back to their respective city board or commission?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it flows both ways. If their board and commission could have opinions about a certain project and they say, we want you to bring that back to the bond commission and express our concerns or our interest or whatever. There's nothing magical about that. We just simply felt like if they each have 1 term, well, they have 2 1-year terms, so theoretically they could sit through 8 meetings at the same person, but it just keeps more people involved. That's all, but certainly that's all completely up to you all. There's nothing magical about this. We're just throwing some things out there to start from. We did feel it was important to codify in your ordinance for all these years I've bragged to my wife that I don't need reading glasses, and it would be a city council meeting where I'm trying to read small fine print that I've got to keep moving it away. This must be the night. Looking at your composition and appointments, thanks. Everybody's helping me now.
We got some more coming to you there, Mr. Barry.
Thank you. I got the big print. Oh, and I got glasses.
Remember to bring the magnifying glass next time.
Just don't tell Beth. That's all I have.
It's on video already, so all you have to do is tune in.
Okay, so we've covered, let's go to 2247 then. C, where you start talking about, okay, here are the kind of the qualities that we're looking for on the commission. So you're saying to the extent possible and practical, the following factors, that's the right term, not qualities, but the following factors shall be considered when appointing members. Residency. Obviously, you want folks that have been here a long time. You want folks who have been here a relatively short period of time, I would imagine. Their experience and interests. So, economic development, recreation, real estate, fundraising, design, engineering, business ownership, community involvement. Now, this isn't meant to be kind of an all-inclusive list, but I think it's meant to kind of be illustrative of, we want people from diverse backgrounds and diverse interests. Then diversity in and of itself, and here we're talking about gender, age, race, ethnicity, so that the commission is reflective of your community. And then kind of the catch-all of other relevant experience. So, I think somebody once said, hey, if you had a planner from Seattle move here and you were like, wow, this person's going to have some great ideas, that might be an other kind of person. So you're saying that you're going to use those in considering, and you're saying that you're going to do that for all appointments. And so what that means is not in just your initial appointment, but that as these vacancies come open, these criteria, again, they're codified. They're going to be used to keep your commission diverse, representative, and really broad. So then you get to, well, how are you going to come up with, if that's your criteria, how are you actually going to come up with the folks that get appointed? And I'll say here that we've had 150. Is that right, Sarah? Is it right at 150 or is it a little more than that?
It was a little more.
Yeah, we've had a little more than 150 people express general interest. Then we sent out a survey to all of those that had expressed interest, asking them to fill out this survey on SurveyMonkey, which gives more information. After our meeting, I'll actually hand out to you, and I sure appreciate Ms. Fox. She was working until 15 minutes ago to tabulate the 86 that we've had fill out the detailed survey. So of 150-ish, we've had 86 already fill out the more detailed survey. We'll also give you the electronic version so you can go in and play with the spreadsheet and sort. But I got a sense from talking to some of y'all today and yesterday, you wanted to start wrapping your heads around who's here. So we'll give that to you, and you have that to start working from. But so just in conversation with you all over the last week or so, and this is not comprehensive, but 3 kind of distinct approaches to coming up with how to make those appointments have come to the fore. One is that you ask myself and staff to basically take all this tabulated data, take the criteria that you're looking at, and provide you all a draft slate to start working from. And that's basically the model that we used with the Inspiring Spaces Committee. Another one would be that we simply provide you all of this information. You all appoint a subcommittee of this body and ask that subcommittee to review all of this information and whatever other input you want to. And then that subcommittee brings a slate to the full body of City Council. And that's how you did the University City Commission. And then lastly is that each City Council member just has a number of appointments. And then you all just simply have that number and you appoint whomever you'd like to. You still pull from all this information, and so you know the types of backgrounds, etc., that you're looking for. I would say under that approach, a potential Achilles heel is that if you just all happen to get the same people or the same types of people all from the same neighborhoods, or if it's only your ward or whatever, you don't have a safety net other than just yourselves at this body when the time comes to make those appointments of saying, whoa, wait a second, we're missing people in this age category, or we need a few more people in this gender or race category. So that would be, something you'd have to work through if you chose to do it that way.
And all of this is public record.
Oh, yeah.
So we need to have, well, I personally would resent, if I had applied, I'd personally resent having my candidacy discussed in public any more than it has to be. Unless, of course, it's all unanimous. But you see what I'm saying? The people who applied for this may not understand that this could be subject to scrutiny.
I think it was on the survey. It was on the survey. It said it would be public. Yes, it would.
Okay.
But still, we need to limit that, I think, as much as we would like for it to be limited if it were us.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. It's what I call self-inflicted wounds when you throw stuff out there. That
like the rule always was for me, to treat it like you would want your mother to be treated.
So then we kind of move into the terms. Members appointed by council are eligible to serve a term of 3 years, so that's kind of the general term. But obviously to have staggered terms so you don't have everybody rolling off at the end of 3 or 6 years, we've suggested that you have a third of the members are in 1-year terms, a third are in 2-year terms, and then a third are in 3-year terms. All members eligible to serve 2 consecutive terms. So what that means is if you get put into a 1-year term slot, you can serve that year, and then if council chooses to reappoint you, you serve a 3-year term, you've served a total of 4 years, you rotate off. If you're in a 3-year slot, you serve a total of 6 years potentially, and then you rotate off. So then you've got the staggered piece working, and everybody doesn't come on and off at the same time. We got some of the technical issues about how you fill unexpired terms. Again, if people move away or they retire. And basically what we're suggesting here is that serving the remainder of an unexpired term is a term. So if someone had been on a 3-year term and they left after a year and a half and you came in and filled that year and a half, you filled that term, that counts as 1 term, then you're eligible for another 3 years, and you'd be 4.5 years in that case. Trying to keep your city clerk from from pulling all of her hair out when she brings these things to y'all. We talked already about the ex officios. We're just tying in on F, we're just simply tying back 2248F, we're simply tying it all back into the section of your existing ordinance, which again talks about not serving more than consecutive terms, etc. Trying to stay consistent with your existing code. Filling of vacancies, have basically already touched on that you'll use the same type of approach and criteria when those vacancies come available. Obviously no compensation. Officers and duties, a chair and a vice chair. As we've already discussed, I guess we were talking about ex officios, but we've contemplated that the chair and vice chair each serve a 1-year period with eligibility to be reappointed by the commission to serve a second year as chair or vice chair. So you'd have chairman, vice chairman serving a total of 2 years.
I put a question mark by that. I'm not so sure that they shouldn't be staggered and not both of them rotate off at the same time.
Okay.
I mean, to have both of your leaders of the group to leave at the same time, I think it might be better to have them to do some kind of stagger there.
Okay, that's a good point.
Good point.
Of course, the chairman presides and can appoint subcommittees, call special meetings, etc. Vice chairman presides when the chair is not there. Ex officio members are able to vote. It's really kind of the only piece of that question. Meetings, quorums, attendance, minutes, 2253. Again, quarterly, but then special call is needed. So if you think about the type of work they're going to be doing as let's say we get design proposals back in that we want the commission to review and discuss, and it's 2 months until they have another meeting, and that's not timely. Obviously, staff would say to the chairman, hey, we think you need to call a meeting to go through this so that we stay on track. I think those will be the kinds of things that drive some of the called meetings that they might have throughout the year, just to keep everything moving forward.
And and I have a note here. You might include E, because you just mentioned it, the subcommittees. That such subcommittees as may be needed. I guess in between the quarterly meetings. Yeah. And I wanted to clarify. I think on the appointment of subcommittees, they would, I don't know if it's worth language, but they would not necessarily need to be within the commission. They would, if you're interested, if you're working on a particular area and you want to appoint a subcommittee of some ad hoc stakeholders, that would be possible under the way this is written.
Well, I think that's something that y'all all should discuss somewhat. I think we kind of contemplated as staff that they would be commission members, recognizing that my view is that you'll have this commission that's kind of the overarching looking at everything, but when you start looking at specific projects, so let's say that we're working on street improvement proposals on Springs Road, that we as staff would simply go out and engage the people along Springs Road and have a charrette out there and show them different ideas and get their feedback and everything, and maybe a subcommittee of the commission is involved in that. But I think you could run into some problems if that commission is tasked with doing that. But that's just our thinking as staff. And that's, if you think about the way planning works in cities, that's a real typical model. Staff will go out and will send invitations to everybody that's along that roadway, bring them in, show them all the different plans, get their feedback at different phases, etc. And you can have focus groups around the river walk, around the city walk. Obviously you're going to have bikers, runners, lots of different groups of people that are going to want to, have some level of involvement. I had not seen that necessarily as being subcommittees of your commission, more town hall style, charrette style engagement with the broader community. But again, that's totally up to you all to discuss and decide if you want to put parameters on that and change that. Okay. Yeah, Ms. Dooley just made a good point that none of your other boards or commissions have that inherent authority to say, well, we want to create a subcommittee of outside of our membership. Right. So that would be a...
I think it gets very unwieldy when you you have this committee and then a subcommittee and what have you. Do you think it's necessary that we even consider that?
I think the commission could want to have a subcommittee of their own body to dive in a little bit deeper and to work with staff on some certain issues.
I think the key there is of their own body.
Right. I think you're broader outside of the commission, again, gets back into just the charrettes and, just overall community engagement, the mind mixer tool. I mean, all those things we're going to try to use to keep the community engaged and get opinions.
And they're always, they can always invite anyone they want in to help them to explain or explore whatever it is that they have questions about. Is that not correct?
Yeah, I think it's going to be very similar to how this body interacts with staff. I mean, I frankly, I think city staff and your bond administration person or team, company, however that ends up shaking out, we'll set the agenda. We'll have those conversations with the commission. It's hard to say, exactly how they'll respond to certain things, and I think we'll just kind of feel that out as we go through it. But I do think it's important that we stress to them and everybody understands that it is advisory. City Council cannot abdicate your responsibility to ultimately approve contracts, select vendors. I mean, all those things. You're wanting their input and their wisdom and their expertise on it, but ultimately this body's going to have to take those actions. And so in some regards, you got to make sure that your commission understands their mission and what their role is, and that they don't start thinking that that's their job.
We're not delegating our responsibility.
Can't. Yeah. Okay, so we've covered voting, attendance. Oh, quorum. We just, I guess maybe it's because of some planning commission experience, we felt like we need to have a fairly low threshold for a committee, for a quorum, I'm sorry. Because again, if you're meeting quarterly or you have called meetings, you really are going to bog down the workflow process if you don't have a quorum and you got to start over and you got to schedule 3 weeks out another meeting, etc. We just came up with 10 randomly. 10 out of 38, 36. So many numbers floating around. Is a third, less than a third of your members. And nothing magical about that. You can make it 12, 15. We just felt like if it's a lower number, you're not going to stop the process of moving forward because you can't have meetings because you don't have a quorum. I don't think it'll be an issue in the first couple of years. I think there'll be tons of excitement and enthusiasm. But, these are long-term projects, a lot of work involved. You can see people starting to kind of willow away over time, maybe.
Are there any laws governing the quorum?
No, it's completely up to y'all to determine what a quorum is.
Making the rules.
Yeah, it's your body, your law. Some conversation with council members about, is 3 consecutive regular meetings missed too many? If they're only meeting 4, if you have 4 in a meeting, they've missed 3/4 of the meetings. Maybe that ought to be 2. You missed 2 meetings.
That would actually be a year.
There's provision for
unexcused needs to be in there.
There's provision for formal waiver.
Yeah, it says without formal consent of the commission, so that in effect they're governing themselves.
That's not in every place, but it is in one place.
And of course,
and 2, they can have as many meetings as they want. They got to have at least 4. But if they have 40, then that's up to them.
Well, I wouldn't say it's totally up to them. I think that's going to be, staff in the chair talking about what you need to do. I think you got to be real sensitive to not wearing everybody out.
Yeah, but
and not micromanaging everything that's going on. Okay. But yeah, I would imagine 4 as being the exception. My guess is they'll probably end up having 6, 8 meetings a year. Again, it's hard to know.
If you take missed 3 meetings, then it would be a year between the 2 meetings that they would attend. If they came after the 4th meeting, it would be the next year.
That's a good point. Well, it says, that's true. It could be, although it's consecutive meetings.
Would that be 3 consecutive meetings counting the called ones and the...
Yeah, all meetings.
I'm certain, too.
This is missing.
Oh, yeah, I don't want to get that.
So looking at the mission, purpose, objective, again, we kind of are restating here that the objective is broad citizen engagement. We included the language about the projects, including but not limited to, carrying over from the preamble there. I think I've already covered kind of the mission of your commission. We already mentioned open meetings and public records laws apply. Okay, so the various questions, discussion points as we get to the last couple slides. Is everybody okay with the language of other projects consistent with the referendum being added? So that you don't box yourselves completely in there. The members residing within the city. I guess that's something you all need to discuss.
I think there were some people who live in ETJ that are very pro-city. They own property here in the city limits, so they do pay taxes. My initial was it should be city members, citizens only, but then we've had some that have worked very, very hard to pass the bond and truly see the vision of what Hickory's going to be, and I hate for us not to have the ability to include the ETJ.
How about the wording, if they pay taxes in the city of Hickory?
I was thinking of that.
That includes property owners and others.
What about businesses versus personal? A lot of people view business taxes as being very different than personal taxes.
Well, I'm not talking about taxes at Walmart. I'm talking about taxes on a building on property. Property taxes.
But there are people who would say, that person, I'm just throwing out devil's advocate, that person, no, their business pays taxes, but they don't.
Well, that's just...
I pay my own taxes.
Yeah, I think people that own property in Hickory that don't necessarily live in Hickory should not be excluded.
I wouldn't want to see an excess of those.
Yeah, I would be of the inkling, because once again our objective is broad citizen engagement, that we not exclude it to just property owners, even in ETJ. Right now, it's not excluded. I mean, and obviously we would not restrict membership to property owners within the city, and so it doesn't make sense that we would restrict them within the ETJ. I mean, I guess other than they've got a financial, interest in it, but I still think that's slippery, real slippery. So I'd say go ETJ and leave it at that.
I agree.
Not say
not property owner
as long as you
like
own
that.
property within the city limits.
Because that wouldn't necessarily be fair to someone that didn't own property but lives in the ETJ that is so pro bond and the positive and sees the vision of what this whole thing was.
Yeah.
I think ETJ ought to be part of this.
I think it'll be a little easier to administrate from a clerk side too. I mean, who's going to check property records and all that other stuff as people transact.
Any other discussion on that one? There's kind of a consensus that you'd go with the ETJ.
We can include the ETJ in our scope of who we nominate or who we appoint.
Are ETJs still in, from what I've read about the state, they're trying to do away with some ETJs.
They are right now.
So maybe there will be no ETJ.
That's possible. Yeah. That's possible. You'd probably, that would be.
Why are they trying to?
I don't know for the reasons.
Because it subjects people to zoning that didn't have a chance to vote on it.
Well, that's the
bottom line.
Taxation.
Do you want to limit it to residency, or do you want to say who resides or owns a business in?
I like to say resides.
I like to include those who own a business. If you own a substantial amount, if you've got an investment in Hickory, I think you ought to be able to be a part of this commission if you're interested in it.
I would rather say resides, that you actually have an investment of living in the ETJ.
But some folks, have more investment in their business than what other folks do maybe in their residence. Why would we exclude those folks?
How are you going to prove that? Who wants that to be discussed out in public? Who wants me to tell the people at McDonald's, hey, this guy pays a lot of taxes? Well,
that's not the issue. Not the issue about how much taxes he pays. The issue is he owns a business and he has an investment in Hickory just the same as anyone else. I'm
going to hear, I just want you to know, I'm going to hear I don't think so-and-so pays any taxes, and he or she's on that commission. They're voting, although we know the limitations of the commission's responsibilities. There will be people out there saying they're voting on my taxes, and they don't pay them themselves. I just think we're getting, okay, we have one or two, I don't know that's a problem. Are we going to say 4 or 5 or 6? Is that too many? Or we just say anybody who has an interest and is smart,
that fits,
or has qualifications,
that fits the demographics.
But I think we would all keep in mind what our goal is, and that's to have this reflection of our community, and know we're not all going to go out and appoint everybody from the ETJ and no one from the city. I think.
But if each person appointed one, and we all know, I know some people extremely committed to this city, some of whom just accidentally bought their residential property outside the city limits, didn't even know it. We all know that.
Yeah. Why would we want to exclude that person?
Well, you're balancing fairness, perception. How important is the perception? How important is it that we include somebody? Are we going to say that that person is so qualified we cannot find a tax-paying person or a resident who lives in Hickory who could have that slot? Or are we just going to...
I don't know. I mean, I'm not understanding you, or you're not understanding me. I think that person does pay taxes. They own that property and that business.
Well, we got off of that.
And we
got off of that. We're saying if you live in Hickory, and this is absolutely correct, Mr. Lael, we're not going to ask if you pay taxes, because if you live in Hickory, we know you're eligible.
Right. And
whether
if you
you
own
pay
a business,
taxes or
we
not.
know that too.
Well, one way to start looking at this is it depends on how you're going to go about appointing them. It kind of starts getting into that next question, because ultimately you all are talking about putting restrictions on yourselves. You know, if you all are going to make the appointments, then it's really up to you to say, well, I picked this person because I felt like they had a business interest in the city, although they don't live in the city, or, you know, for whatever reason. So in some regards, you don't have to put any of those restrictions on yourselves, other than just the transparency and the fact that everybody knows who got appointed and where they live and
We
what
can address
generally
those
their business
individually as
interests
we
are.
come to them, is what you're saying.
Well, or we all got to approve.
So let's talk. Well, let's talk about how you make the appointment. Maybe those rules, if you will, come into play if you're going to look at an entire slate. Okay, so that's where either the city manager hands you a list and says, here's 27 people that meet these different criteria, and you discuss them and you vote on them. Or your subcommittee does that. Then probably those rules start coming more into play. But if you all each just want to say, hey, we each have 4 or 5 or 6 appointments or whatever that number is, then I don't know that those rules are as important at all, because everybody knows, well, Miss Patton appointed these people and she's accountable for them for whatever reason she had to appoint them.
But collectively, we're accountable for creating a process that is viewed as fair and reasonable to the people who live in Hickory.
True.
We are accountable to them, and not necessarily anybody in an ETJ or anywhere else. Now, if there is somebody in an ETJ who lives in the ETJ who has some qualifications that clearly make them a superior choice than anybody else, I say let's bring them on.
Yeah, but that's I mean, that's a judgment call. Anybody could say that. We could say that.
I'm just saying we got 40,000 to pick from. I mean, I'm getting kind of.
Currently, is there anybody that falls in that category that we know of on the list?
I haven't looked at all 86.
We don't even know what words they're in yet.
No, theoretically I do. It's sitting here, but I haven't looked at all of them, so I
okay.
can't tell
I'm
you.
sorry. Good word, Mrs. Fox.
Yeah. Oh, well, so maybe you move from the discussion of the rules to the discussion of how do you want to move forward with appointing them, because they interrelate. So maybe if you make the decision about how you want to appoint them, then that helps you discuss, you know, what kind of criteria, what kind of rules do you have.
Individual appointments now.
I am too.
I'm just very much in favor of the individual appointments.
Rather than a slate or a subcommittee, that we lose then our ability to have the responsibility of appointing people we think would do a good job.
Well, that fit the demographics of that we want this commission to look like the entire city. And I think it's each of our individual responsibilities to make sure that we accomplish that.
Well, the difficulty that I have with that, and it's not an extreme difficulty because we use that with our existing commissions by and large, and it works. It works. And I really do trust the process, and I trust my fellow council members on their appointments, and I'm sure you likewise with me. But we would be making them in a vacuum, right? We'd be selecting 6 in a vacuum. Unless until the commission's up and convened, then you get a sense of who else is on there.
Well, but there's no reason we couldn't have the discussion among. Okay, I've picked these 4 individuals, and I just want to check with you to make sure you haven't picked the same 4 individuals, and that type of discussion.
So you're going to take it out of the wards?
No, but if you leave it in the wards.
I think we represent the entire city.
Take it out of the wards?
Yeah. We represent the entire city. We ought to be able to pick persons from the list, regardless of the ward that they are in, because we represent everyone in all the wards.
And 2, I might know someone in another ward that I think would do a really good job and think they ought to be on it, and you might not know them. And so I don't want to be limited.
It's important that every ward, that no ward say, I don't have, we have ward representation here. Every ward has one representative at this table.
And they'll have more than one on this commission.
Let's say you've got 2 from Ward 3 and 2 from Ward 1 and 8 from Ward 5. How does that look?
Well, I think it's incumbent upon us to balance that out amongst ourselves.
Well, the problem with that, I think, is that, number one, I'm not comfortable having a lot of discussion outside these chambers as it relates to appointments to this commission. I just think that our commitment, and I know you guys are all the same way, that we're going to have to do this as we do it. The other problem we got is 7 years down the road, I know, I've worked with you guys. I know what spirit you're coming from, what you want this commission to look like, how you feel like it should work. And I mean, we are clearly all on the same team, but we're writing code here that's going to be here when we're not here. And so I think we've got somewhat of a responsibility to sort of take ourselves out of it.
Well, and you say, 5 years from now, do you say, well, this was a Ward 6 appointee. This person lives in Ward 2, but it's a Ward 6 appointment, so Ward 6 alderman gets to decide this, and they can go anywhere in the city they want to do it. But how do you know, I guess, do the appointments follow the seat if you do it that way?
Yeah, I mean,
you can pick from anybody in the city, but the appointment stays with that chair.
Yeah, right. Yes, that's the way I would. Yeah,
plus, these things, they do rotate. I mean, you have another appointment after 1 year and 2 years.
It's no different.
So it changes every year.
Maybe you won't be here next year.
Right.
But somebody will hold that chair.
Right.
So we're saying certain seats are held by a chair and not by a ward.
I don't think we ought to restrict it by ward.
I stand opposed to an appointment process that's not, at least at the very basic level, intended to be geographically diverse.
And equal. And as equal as you can
make
it.
Equal among the...
Well, if Brad knows someone in my ward he thinks would be a very effective member, and I don't know him, I think he would try to convince me, or I would interview that person, talk to them, and find out if I agree with him.
But if you've already got your 4 picks, and you want those 4 people, and he's got 3, but he wants to pick his last one from your ward, I don't think we ought to restrict that process.
I don't know what happens if we end up with some ward having 1 pick.
Yeah.
I don't think we will.
I don't.
2 picks.
Well, we kind of like start a whole new game here, and
what you're saying is, by coin toss, we're going to make this even.
Yeah.
We're going to.
I'm scared of this.
Well, and it's what worries me is not now. I think we'd be okay. It's 7 years from now, because we're all changed, and all of a sudden, I don't know.
Then that's up to them.
And I think public opinion is highly important in this.
We could.
I'm in favor of picking from my ward.
You're saying restricted only to your ward?
Yes.
I disagree with that.
Well,
Then
that's
what would
fine.
happen to the ETJ? That wouldn't be part of it. So then you either,
Well-
it's an either or there. It's
You
if you're a
represent the
ward
entire
only.
city,
That's right.
Yeah.
not just your ward, and that's my contention for that.
Mine too.
Okay, so there's clearly no consensus on that. So we're going to have to bring back to you options that you all can basically vote on and decide, through that process.
You want to wait to vote, or do you want to just vote? Or, I mean, what's our time frame now? I don't want this to drag on forever,
Right,
but I'm not pushing for a vote tonight.
Right. So what I had anticipated is exactly what's happening. Great discussion, back and forth, give and take on these things. It's really up to you all. If you feel like you can be there in a couple of weeks, you call for your public hearing, which gives you input for people to come to the podium and have their opinions, give you their opinions on how this ought to look. At that point, you would have a draft that you could tweak, you could vote on, or you could say, you know what, we're still not where we need to be, and keep working on it.
Can I ask that you? Can we ask that you include certain specific options for us to be thinking about?
Absolutely.
I would like to be thinking about an option. And everybody's got a right to have their option brought into this. That we have, each council member appoints 4. That's 24. Plus we have 9, right? So that gets us 33. Which will never matter, but that's an odd number. We have 9 ex officio, right?
Yeah. It'd be 20.
Rudy,
So we have
that'd be
6 times 4.
There's 7 of us.
Huh?
There's 7.
Well, let me finish my option.
Oh, okay. You're talking about just the council.
Because I honestly think this is going, if we just cannot, if we can get through this without causing public opinion issues, it's going to work out great. So what I was going to say is, you guys make your appointments. We say that this committee will be no less than 24 plus 9, no less than 27 plus 9. And if we have clear issues about the diversity and fairness and balance, then and only then I have up to 3 appointments to try to get it fair. And that's not coming from any particular ward. It's just out there. It gives us a chance. And what that accomplishes is this, a couple of things. One, if everything's real silent, nobody's hearing anything about these appointments, and all of a sudden one day, bang, they're all out there, and everybody says, they did this behind closed doors or something. This is not a good start for this. We need to, let everybody pick their 4. Set whatever rules you want. I mean, I personally think the simplest thing is to say you've got to live in Hickory, and my opinion has evolved on that. And then I could have up to 3 only if there's an obvious need to balance. Otherwise, I don't want anybody.
I think we have a responsibility to appoint, and that would include you. I mean, we've told the citizens we're going to be appointing this committee, and I think we have an obligation to each take part in that and appoint citizens to this commission.
Well, if each of us appoint
So that's
4,
my-
including me, and then we get to the end and we got this big hole in there and say there's no way to balance it, what do we do?
Well, then we have
Why would we
discussion.
allow that to happen?
Well, that's because, I guess because we're going to be buzz talking about this all the time.
Well, I mean,
I would say.
I think that's probably part of it.
I'd kind of like to minimize that. But hey, can he include that option?
Yes, please.
And it can be voted down or voted up.
Okay, so for my indulgence, this is good discussion. Let's talk about this subcommittee option. Let's just run through all the options here and have sort of the give and take and good and bad, so everybody's sort of we get a sense of where
Could we
everybody's
take
coming
a
from.
5-minute recess?
You're the mayor.
Sure.
A 5-minute recess. At 1 minute till 9. Let's be back in.
All right.
I'm sorry, folks. I let the time get away. I've never been known to do that before. Okay, Mr. Burke.
Okay, well, I think before the recess, Mr. Lael had mentioned talking through those three options that are at least out there now and discuss them a little bit, so it's really whatever y'all want to do, however y'all want to proceed.
Well, I'd like to at least...
You want to talk about subcommittee options, right?
Well, yeah, I want to talk about both options
okay.
and sort of at least air what my sense of it is, you know, because, you know, there's no right or wrong answer here. I mean, you know, I don't think...
The only thing is perception, public opinion and perception.
Well, and but I do think that we also, and this is where I'm, you know, it starts to, maybe there's some ideas diverging. I think the commission also has some function that we've got to be responsible that they fulfill, and to be functional, they've got to be made up a certain way, in my opinion, to meet the bond objectives. But so the subcommittee thing still would provide council the direct appointment authority, and would it'd be a lot of work on the 3-member subcommittee to do that. But I would be willing to serve if we went that route.
Well, as you know, that was my choice.
I know. Look, this is an evolving thing. I mean, this is good discussion.
Well, and just sitting here thinking off the top of my head, I mean, maybe you also consider a hybrid, where each council member brings forward their 4, and then the subcommittee reviews those to do exactly what the mayor pointed to make sure that you do have the representation and diversity that you're looking for, and that's their stated goal.
And the ward representation.
Well, I mean, representation in all categories. So maybe that's so that you kind of hitting it both, having your own appointments, but then you've got kind of this clearinghouse of your subcommittee to review it to make sure that you've got, you know, the right kind of representation you're looking for.
Well, if we do it by wards, if I have to appoint 4 from a ward, there's only 1 on this list of Ward 3. So I'm going to have to go and convince 3 other people they want to serve.
Well, I would be willing to go with you to try to do that, because I think down the road that will be thrown up at us. Okay, even though we can say you didn't sign on, there will be people who say they only had 1 from my ward and they had 6 from 5, and they're spending my money. Again, I'm dealing with perception and public opinion, and in the sense that perception is politics, I'm dealing with that. But I'd be willing to go help you try to get some more.
And 2, he said it only 80-some out of the 150, so maybe the other rest of them are all yours. This is not a complete list.
It just doesn't done yet. But it also raises the question of, do you have to have filled out the survey and submitted the information to be considered?
I think you should.
I think you have to.
Yes.
Yeah, you got to have a standard there.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we don't have
that. Doesn't mean that we can't go to somebody and say, please fill it out and get it in so we can consider it.
Now, you do have a deadline out there of 16th to have done the survey to be considered in this first round. But again, this is all, you know, y'all can extend that, you can change that, you can.
These are the only ones that have filled out the actual survey. Can you also provide to us who has expressed an interest but not taken it to the next step, so that if, as Danny says, he's only got 1 out of this, but there might have been 6 or 7 others that just haven't taken it, and it just needs a push from Danny to say, go fill it out so I can have more than just those represented.
Yeah.
If we could have that as a separate list.
Okay, so continuing, piggybacking on Mick's discussion with this hybrid thought, which is, I think, pretty good. What if you did, each seat gets 3 appointments. They get it, it's theirs to appoint. And then a subcommittee then selects the balance of appointments.
It's an option, but I prefer.
Can you say you take 3 appointments and 3 nominations? I don't know. The subcommittees, of course, the subcommittee, you're going to have a lot of information.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is important we have qualified, committed, interested people. But it's just about as important that it's perceived as fair by the public. And I think you all could. I think the subcommittee could do that.
Mm-hmm. You know, the subcommittee would obviously meet at a call.
So you have 3, so that would be 18. And then you're going to pick 6 more, right?
Well, I don't know how to handle you.
Well, let me explain. I don't want 80-something. First of all, the fact that we have 80 people who care enough to have filled out a second amendment tells me there's a lot of interest in this. If there's a lot of interest in this, there are going to be a lot of disappointed people because we're only going to select 24 to 27. I don't want to have everybody out there lobbying their ward person and me. I just don't want that. And that's why I said then I would be amenable to saying maybe I'll take 3 or 4 or whatever y'all think I should, only if it's needed to balance out the committee in some way. Otherwise, don't call me and say, I really wanted to be on there and so didn't put me on.
It's just hard to codify if it's needed to balance out. I mean, who's going to make that decision under what terms, what
it had to be clear. It had to be clear.
I mean, yeah,
like if we
could hold a discussion on what's clear for now till midnight, I'm sure.
Well, but
clear as mud.
But we'll know clear when we see clear, maybe. Huh? I'm just saying, my guess would be we go through this process and I don't appoint anybody because it's just not clear that we have a balance issue to deal with. I don't want to have to deal with 80 people who want to belong on this committee and it's going to swell to 120 or 130.
That's certainly an option.
Well, so one solution is in the next week or so, as we put the agenda together for your next crack at this, I'm putting together options in effect. The mayor's already presented one option. As you think about other options, you can simply email them and we'll put them all on there, and then you can work through each of those options and vote them each up and down and start narrowing the field, so to speak.
It'll probably delay getting the ordinance passed, past the public hearing.
It might, you might have to go another 2 weeks.
Because we're going to have to, it's interrelated, right? So
yeah.
once you do that,
then you have the ripple effect, and then we got to adjust the other parts of the ordinance to reflect whatever process you choose to appoint.
So do you have an understanding on where we are headed on a vote?
Absolutely not. But I'm going to put together a process that helps you get there.
By searching.
So just a couple of other quick things to run through that maybe aren't as tricky. Are you okay with 10 being a quorum, or do you want a different number than 10 as your quorum?
10's fine.
Okay. 3 consecutive missed meetings, is that too many? Do you want that to be less?
2.
2 consecutive unexcused. Yeah.
Okay.
Unexcused in advance. By action of the
It's kind of sad if we'd only have 10 people show up for a meeting now.
That would be sad.
36, that would be terribly sad.
I don't think that's going to happen.
You haven't touched on...
But
No, I think there's interest here.
I think so. I don't think many people will miss.
Well, I've heard from a lot of people who are interested in you.
Okay, that concludes with the presentation.
No, we haven't discussed the slate. We had talked about the makeup of others on the committee, the ex officio.
Oh, ex officios, thank you.
Because I do think, I don't know why this chamber is, because I think the salt block should have a stake in it if we're going to open it up to something other than our appointments and our present committees or commissions. Then we need to look at opening it up to DDA, other business groups that have a stake in this, just as much. Lenore, even though they've got a commission member, but there are certainly other groups that certainly should be representative and have a stake in this also. So if we open it to one, we've got to open it to all. So I think there again, it becomes institutionalized, and we should bring it back to the citizen base rather than.
Well, for instance, you say the salt block, you have 4, 5, 6, 7 groups in the salt block.
So where do you draw the line? So if you include the chamber, let's do.
Well, the Chamber of Commerce. I'm going to. This is just my opinion. It's been publicized that a group of our citizens acting in good faith with no malice reached an agreement with the chamber that they could have representation on this. I think we need to accept it. I don't think we want to fight this battle day one of moving forward.
Well, so do we need to pick and choose?
That'll be something we'll need to vote on, I guess.
Yeah.
So then do we include Salt Block?
No.
Do we?
I don't think we do. All we have here is we got the Chamber of Commerce because of that commitment that was made.
And that commitment, though.
And everything else here is a city commission or committee or council.
But that commitment should not have been made.
It was made. And we can, in my opinion, we're going to cause more trouble and issues if we move forward saying that we're contesting that.
Well, then I would like it to open it up then for
we have not
others.
turned this over to the Chamber of Commerce. But their commitment was made to them that they'd have a representative. It was publicized. Whether it should have been publicized or not is a different issue. But you and I both know, Mr. Patton, how often we get stuck with stuff we didn't make, okay?
Mm-hmm. Then I do think, at least for the discussion of other options to what other stakeholders should in fact be included that have just as big as interest in, and were supportive of the bond, went out of their way to support it, and should be included.
That sounds equitable to me.
Same thing. So
it's either all or none.
Yeah. Well, I would suggest you do the same thing with other options of ways to appoint. If there's other groups outside or within your own boards and commissions, let me know. I'll add them to the list, and then y'all can go through each one of them, vote them up and down, and decide who you want to include with ex officio and not. I think is that what you're saying, Ms. Patton?
Okay. Is this going to be should we have a workshop?
Probably.
Yeah.
We have,
haven't we? Yeah, that's what it sounds like what we're doing.
We need to do this a little earlier in the day and be able to I
think it's important.
No. Mm-hmm. It's critical. I mean, there are going to be things that have to be settled down the road in various ways. Various things are going to come up. But the closer we can come with something that we're all happy with and the public accepts as fair, it'll be better off.
Well, it's quite obvious that there are a lot of people that are very, very close in the city, and I'm very proud of them. Yeah. And the disappointing part is some of them won't be able to participate.
Yeah, but you know what? And I agree with you. That
maybe not the first time. Maybe not the first time. Maybe down the road.
Yeah, but we got to. I mean, I was thinking when I made the comment about subcommittees. I mean, to some extent, the public is the subcommittee of this commission. You know, they are. All meetings are open, discussion, all that. So, I don't feel like any commission we have will be, will exclude input from the public. You get all.
We done, Mr. Berry?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, if you say so.
You did a great job of that.
And moving target all along. It's good discussion.
Any appointments?
No. Actually, we got one more presentation.
Revenue.
I know Mr. Wood. Mr. Wood approached me during the break and said, "Do I have to do mine?" And I said, "Yeah, Now we want to talk about evaluations. Mr. Wood, if you would come to the podium.
Wood was looking disappointed there.
Actually, we don't want to talk about it, but we're going to. So I tried to get you out of it. I asked Mr. Berry, and he said no. So I'll do it next time. But Mayor Wright, members of City Council, Mr. Berry, Mr. Crone, I need to flip.
Yeah, sorry. He sent it to you.
I didn't print it out.
You did print it. But
The item on your agenda talks about revenue neutral for the coming year, really to have a conversation about the property tax rate. We're going to talk about revenue neutral, but we're going to talk about two other things as well. And I want to apologize. I've got about 7 or 8 slides here. I've got a lot packed in. I know you've had a long meeting tonight. I want to apologize so if you want to ask questions, have comments, or want to challenge me on anything that's in here, please feel free to do that. So the question that we're going to answer tonight is what might impact the FY 15-16 property tax rate that we're going to be working on for the upcoming year's budget. So we know one thing, countywide revaluation, we've got our numbers, we'll go over those. and the real property values took effect January 1st. We've got a breakdown of what all that looks like. We know we're losing the privilege license revenue effective July 1st. That's $1.1 million. The legislature has repealed that source of revenue for local governments.
Is there, just real quick, have they figured out, or is there still discussion about what they're going to substitute that with?
No.
Is that still a discussion?
That was a promise.
Okay, so we still have some hope of some type of replacement for that.
Okay.
You thinking about the song Three Coins in the
Can I
Fountain?
sell you?
Yes. Okay. And then the third thing we're going to talk about is in the current year's budget, we increased spending by $900,000. The city manager had recommended a 2-cent increase. City council opted to tap fund balance to cover those. So we need to talk about where we're going to go with that down the road. So there are other operational increases that we're not going to talk about that could impact the property tax rate. One of the things we feel like will not impact the property tax rate in the coming year is the bond referendum. We don't think there's going to be any, we're not going to be going to market to sell bonds in the coming years. We don't think that anything's going to be impacted on the property tax rate related to the bond referendum. So let's dive into the countywide property revaluation. And this is for real property. Every 4 years, Catawba County revalues real property in Catawba County, and they just completed that. Real property values in the city of Hickory dropped almost 6.6%. Okay, so that's not good, but it's better than what we thought we could be looking at. I had held Burke County up as an example. They dropped 8% their last reval cycle, so we dropped about 6.6%. And here's the breakdown on how that looked on the various types of property. Commercial property in the city of Hickory dropped about 10%. Industrial property dropped about 14%. And residential property dropped less than 3%. So residential property actually held up the best of the three. So
I think that's a recovery, actually.
Yeah, that's better than what we thought it was going to be. Real property across the whole county dropped 5.4%. So we did worse than what the county average was. However, we did better on average than when you look at what the municipalities in the county dropped in terms of their real value. It was 8.8%. We did better on average than all the other municipalities in the county by about 2%. You with me? Mm-hmm. Okay. This is important to keep in mind. Countywide, 70% of all properties dropped in value. 25% of all properties increased in value, and about 5% of the property values stayed the same. So a tremendous drop in parcels and properties around the county. And I don't know that number for Hickory, but you figure it's got to be in the same ballpark, so that's significant. Okay. State law requires the calculation of a revenue-neutral property tax rate. That's not always the case. This has been the case since 2003. And here's the history on that. The original intent of this revenue-neutral calculation was coming out of the 90s. You had all this major property value increase. Cities and counties would play the game of decreasing their rate, but not enough to hold everybody harmless or at least produce the same amount of revenue. So in essence, what you would have is a property tax increase disguised by a decrease in the rate. Are you with me? So this was intended to keep local governments honest and reveal how much they would have to reduce their rates by to bring in the same amount of revenue. I remember when these conversations were going on, never was it considered what would happen when the opposite happened. When your values dropped, how much would you have to increase it? Because we were coming out of the 90s. Nobody ever anticipated we would be where we are, particularly the last two reval cycles. They've dropped. But that is where we are. Our last two reval cycles have resulted in declining real property values. And this necessitates the opposite of what the intent of the law was, but it's still the law. So we're going to have to show how much of an increase in the property tax rate we're going to have to collect the same amount of tax revenue. Okay? And so just some clarification here. The numbers I'm going to present are preliminary, and they don't include the negative impact that appeals will have on the final revenue neutral number, meaning we've got a number of appeals around the county and specifically in the city that people are appealing down in terms of their value. That will negatively impact our values when those are finally determined. I talked to Mark Logan today, the county tax administrator. He said we're actually running, in that we did have such a drop in values, we're having less appeals than about half as many appeals as what he had experienced the last time around. Okay, so it'll be a negative impact, but not as bad as it may have been during a regular, normal cycle kind of reval year. And additionally, we're not here tonight to talk about or to recommend a property tax rate increase. The tax rate recommendations come through the annual budget process. I'm just doing this for purposes of demonstration. All the property tax recommendations come through the annual budget process, not what's going to be up on the screen here tonight. So I want to be very clear about that. Okay, so here's how the law requires you to do your revenue neutral calculation. It says take your last known value before revaluation. So that number for us is about $4.7 billion, okay? Take your current property tax rate, 50 cents, and calculate what that levy would be, meaning when you multiply the rate times your base per $100 of valuation, you get $23.7 million tax levy. Okay, so that's your initial target number right here, but it gets a little bit more to it than that, so just keep this number in mind. So now it says, okay, take your value after revaluation. So we're going to be at about $4.4 billion, so we go from 4.7 to 4.4 billion. Now it says, what kind of tax rate do you have to produce this $23.7 million number? Okay, well, when you do the math on that, it's 53.65 cents. But it doesn't end there. The law also says you have to take the last 4 years of, it says, growth in your property tax base on average and increase this number by that. So over the last 4 years, since our last revaluation, we have increased about 0.5% a year on average. So you increase this 53.65% by a factor of 1/2 or 0.5%. And you get 53.95 cents. That is our, based on the numbers we know today, your revenue neutral property tax rate is 53.95 cents. Okay. Any questions about any of that so far?
Well, the 0.55, is that pretty much
that's 0.5%
inflation or increase in service? Or?
No, that's just we've had very sketchy. I mean, we've gone down a little bit, we've gone up a little. I mean, we've just been,
it's the growth. I mean, it's new construction.
It's new construction.
I mean, it's,
Yeah. Okay. So
paper growth.
Yeah. So now a penny on your property tax rate will drop from producing about $460,000 per penny to $428,000 per penny. And so even though, let's just call it 4 cents for simplicity's sake, so even though the revenue neutral is a 4-cent increase, many taxpayers would be paying about the same or less in property taxes depending on what your values came in at. Remember, 70% saw some sort of decrease.
On average.
On average.
And everybody knows what averages are.
I know. Yeah.
But on average,
Yeah.
everybody's going to, on average, the taxpayer here will pay exactly what they paid last year before this next year.
Yes, on average. Right. And I'm going to give you an example. I looked, my neighbor, one house down, actually I looked at my next door neighbor's, his dropped 18%. I didn't want to use that example, so I went one door down from him. I think his dropped about 6.5%. So here's what he's looking at. Okay, his current value before reval was $251,000 for his home. Of course, the tax rate's 50 cents. His tax bill was $1,259. Okay, so under reval numbers, his new value is $235,000 for his home. So if you take the revenue neutral rate, 53.95 cents, his new tax bill is $1,270, which isn't. He's not held harmless. It's $11 higher, but in essence, I mean, that's your revenue. That's an example. You'd have to have, there's 17,000 parcels in the city of Hickory. You'd probably have to have about 17,000 different tax rates to literally hold everybody.
If you're talking average, the average person won't see any change in the bottom line much at all.
Well, it depends on, well, Mr. Berry's values went up at his house, so he's going to see an increase potentially. So you have some people that went up, but on average, that's not the case. Okay.
But also, and this is a negative point, but on average, the residential taxpayers are going to pay a little more of the total bill than commercial and industrial ratio has typically been.
Right.
So That's the way it is. It means that our property, our residential properties have held their value better than commercial and industrial. And
what percentage of the, if you know this, is the city tax paid by business versus residential?
I can get that. That's in the annual audit, and I just don't know it off the top of my head, but I know it is in the audit.
it was something about half and half.
Well, it's more residential. It's
More
I think
residential?
I think it's 66-33, something like that. Yeah.
Okay. I was thinking that.
Yeah.
They used to have almost the opposite.
Yeah, years ago.
right.
But we have typically in this area had more tax dollars, proportionally more tax dollars coming from commercial
Oh,
and
absolutely.
industrial than other places.
Correct.
And we need to get back to that point.
Yes. So any questions about reval so far in your revenue neutral? Okay. This one's going to be a lot more straightforward. Of course, effective July 1st, 2015, the privilege license as we know it today, the way it's constituted and collected, will essentially disappear for local governments in North Carolina. There will still be a privilege license option, but it's not going to be an option for us. So that will result in a $1.1 million loss in annual revenue to the city. If you were to calculate that into a property tax rate, it's 2.6 cents on the city's property tax rate. And we're going to have we're not suggesting that's how that gets fixed. I'm just saying that's the value of what that is. Any questions on that? And again, to your question, there was a commitment made that they would hold us harmless or find an alternative revenue source, and I think the conversations so far have been that, I don't know if Mr. Berry wants to share with his comment. Okay.
We're going to make sure they remember they made that commitment, correct?
Not only us, but others.
So there you go. That's privilege license. So, and then finally, if you remember, again, with the current year's budget, the budget recommended a 2-cent property tax rate increase for additional resurfacing and the loss of some revenue. We have a healthy fund balance. City Council opted to tap into that fund balance as opposed to doing the property tax rate increase, and that was okay. But we need to have a conversation at least. Do we continue to do that? Do we fix that? You know, so some of the things we need to think about. So that, again, is 2 pennies on the city's property tax rate. And typically, the way our budget model currently runs, we anticipate producing about having 2% more in revenue than expenditures every year. And the way we're doing that is not because our revenues are growing. We really, through our lapse salaries and our hiring freeze, we're trying to produce, we're trying to save funds on the expenditure side so that at the end of the year we have collected more than we have expended in the budget. And that runs about a 2%. Back in the 90s, the model was, well, we would budget conservatively on the revenue side, and then your revenues would naturally grow. And you'd get that 2 or 3% that would go into fund balance that way. But that's not where we are economically right now. So our whole budget model has been turned on its head. And what that allows you to do, throwing off some money to put into fund balance every year, gives City Council the financial flexibility to take advantage of unanticipated opportunities. The Greater Hickory Tennis Association. That money would come from your general fund balance. It wouldn't come from capital reserve because that money is more than committed for what we have in there. And additionally, by being able to put that amount of money into our fund balance, we've also migrated over to using fund balance to some degree for funding just our ongoing capital needs because our capital reserve isn't able to cover everything. Okay, so your general fund balance currently stands at $13.5 million, or 29% of your budget. Your goal is a 25% fund balance, and that's why the decision was made not to do the property tax rate increase, but to tap fund balance because there isn't an excess there beyond your goal. And the way the fund balance stands right now, you could spend down $2 million and still be at the 25% goal. Now, $2 million is a lot of money, but you heard $500,000 basically tonight with the tennis association. So I mean, it can go pretty quickly. So just keep that. And I give you all this that we're going to have a conversation about and it's a policy decision for the board. What is going to be the policy of the city moving forward on appropriating fund balance. So that would just be something we need to be thinking about. Okay, so just the last slide. So revenue neutral is thank you for correcting my typo, is 3.95 cents to hold taxpayers harmless on average. So that we can continue to maintain basic services, improve its license revenue, request for pay, increase the whole conversation we need to have about fund balance. And keep in mind in this presentation, this just gets us back to square one. We're not talking about adding more police officers, new building projects. These are just challenges that we're going to have on the revenue side in the upcoming year's budget. So with that, any comments or